The WTO agreement will move China in the right direction. It will advance the goals America has worked for in China for the past 3 decades. And of course, it will advance our own economic interests. Economically, this agreement is the equivalent of a one-way street. It requires China to open its markets with a fifth of the world's population, potentially the biggest markets in the world, to both our products and services in unprecedented new ways. All we do is to agree to maintain the present access which China enjoys. Chinese tariffs from telecommunications products to automobiles to agriculture will fall by half or more over just 5 years. For the first time, our companies will be able to sell and distribute products in China made by workers here in America without being forced to relocate manufacturing to China, sell through the Chinese government, or transfer valuable technology. For the first time, we'll be able to export products without exporting jobs.
So recently saw Larry Summers' debate, if you want to call it that, on All In podcast. And as I understand, Larry Summers worked with Bill Clinton to set up this whole China WTO inclusion. I found Larry Summers' whole position to be disingenuous. I played you this video, and apparently this was the stated goal of inclusion of China, as stated by Bill Clinton right here. Larry Summers, though, in that podcast, as you may have heard it, was taking the position that, China already had all the access and privileges it needed in USA, so that it was no specific restriction was lifted off of China. And if that was the case, then why did they even do the WTO agreement? Because to me, it sounds like all of the stated goals Bill Clinton just mentioned here, none of those were accomplished. As D.T. Davis says here, it wasn't a blunder, it was a choice. Letting China into WTO allowed Western elites to enrich themselves while putting their boots to the throat of working class. Was there not to like in that for a ruling class? That's pretty much it. And now Larry Summers is trying to defend that in some roundabout way. So what I did was ask ChatGPT, like, can you cite some specific instances of restrictions or privileges that were lifted once China was included? I think David Sacks raised this point as well. The MFN status was locked in permanently after WTO inclusion. It eliminated discriminatory tariffs globally. It granted China most favored nation tariff rates. Access to WTO's dispute settlement mechanism. China gained access to legal protection under the WTO framework, which it could now challenge trade barrier legally. It did so effectively in cases like U.S. anti-dumping duties on Chinese tires. So basically, China could dump all of its cheap material here in U.S. Investor confidence soared, aka the elite class got more confidence, more backing to go ahead and invest in China. FDI surged there, so basically opened up a new market for them, and it undercut everything U.S. had going on for the working class. Because although Bill Clinton did say that the jobs will not be shipped out, but we all know what happened there. Chinese exports grew nearly 5x from 2001 to 2008. China overtook Germany. This may have been a consequence of the WTO, may not have been the restriction that is lifted. And U.S. trade deficit with China ballooned, meaning China was importing a whole lot into U.S. WTO commitment was selectively enforced. So that's where I think this whole thing goes off the rails. China agreed to reduce tariff from 40% to 9% by 2005. Open banking, telecom, insurance. Do you really think banking, telecom, insurance sectors in China are open to the rest of the world? I do not think so. You can think that. Whether it fully complied or not, restrictions were legally removed, making non-compliance a violation rather than a policy. Firms could bypass joint venture. Many foreign firms gained the right to wholly own operation in various sectors. This reversed decades of mandatory joint venture rule, which were de facto restriction on foreign business. All right, let's see what else. Bottom line is claiming that China didn't get any restrictions lifted post WTO is not supported by trade policy history or global economic data. Even if China didn't open everything, it still gained enormous success, which fueled in China manufacturing boom, foreign investment, global supply chain, strategic geo-economic influence. Then I asked, okay, give me some examples of China doing malicious compliance or non-compliance to the WTO order, and basically, they're allowed to do that to benefit of someone being that elite ruling class. So IP theft and tech transfer, protect IP, prohibit forced tech transfer. I'm sure the CEOs of companies would rather not have their technology stolen, but this is China's way of negotiating that. You get access to cheap labor, high-skilled labor, supply chains, and everything, but then you can't prosecute us on IP theft and tech transfer. Kevin O'Leary was going off on this one as well, but this was basically their way of saying to US that, okay, you can get your stuff produced for cheap at scale, but we're not going to follow all the rules and laws that have been established in the agreement. State-owned enterprise should operate on commercial terms. We know that's not the case. Subsidies, notify and limit subsidies that distort trade. China underreports subsidies, opaque government support continues. Data localization, ensure open access for digital trade. Laws require, in reality, foreign companies to store data locally and pass security reviews. That might not be such a bad thing for each sovereign nation to do for its own citizens. Agriculture tariff rates, commitment to minimum import of key agriculture good. China did not fill quota as required. Import licenses were restricted. WTO doesn't explicitly regulate foreign exchange, but fairness is implied, and China long overvalued the yuan to boost exports pre-2015, as they say. Ensure transparency for regulatory system. Many rules are vague or unpublished. Legal redress is difficult. WTO rules discourage unjustified trade restriction. China's great firewall blocks foreign platforms, product standards, and safety. Often use vague safety standard to delay foreign good. China has retaliated with opaque sanction on countries like Australia, Lithuania. So basically, in summation, like Larry Summers' position doesn't feel like it comports with the stated goal by Bill Clinton. None of that got done to the benefit of the U.S. working class. At least it worked in benefit of the ruling class, that they got to scale up their operation at cheaper rates. Sure, that worked for them. And now with the advent of AI and robotics, I think they're trying to cut off China is what it is. Like they feel they don't need the Chinese working class as much. And Larry Summers, in my view, is being disingenuous about what happened in the past. I'll let you guys decide. I've shown you the fact as I found them, and I'll let you guys decide.